Hey everybody, this is Anthony from VR Game Rankings, and welcome to episode 14 of our daily vlog series. And of course, today is Thursday, October 19th. So what do I have for you today on the daily vlog? Well, to be completely honest, there really isn't any major news stories, and game discussion, I don't have a ton for you there either, but we're just going to take it step by step and just see where it leads us and go through the stuff that we do have. So, not every day is going to be the most incredible stories and the most incredible game discussions. So we just have to kind of make do with what we have. But let's go ahead and see what we have on the docket today. So the first news story today is LG. Okay, so we know that LG is working on a Steam VR headset, but the big question is, when is this thing coming and whatever happened to it? I honestly thought that we were going to get this LG sometime this year. Well, it's pretty obvious that that's not going to happen, because if it was going to happen, we would have already heard about it by now. So I don't think we're getting an LG headset this year. So if you're looking for a brand new Steam VR headset, you're either going to have to go with the Pimax, but again, that's coming like January, I think, 2018. You're going to either have to go with the Pimax, or you're going to have to wait and see if this LG comes very early in the year 2018, which is probably what's going to happen. It might be shown off at the Winter Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas in early January, and then it might release shortly after that. That's probably what we're looking at this point. But we do know the name, or at least supposedly the name. So supposedly the name for this LG headset, and I had to take a double take when I saw this name. The name for the LG headset is UltraGearVR. UltraGearVR. Like, what kind of a name is this? At first, when I first looked at it, I was like, UltraGearVR. And I was like, oh, okay, Gear VR. This is the Ultra version. And then I'm like, wait a minute. Gear VR is Samsung. What the hell is LG doing with UltraGearVR? And the name UltraGearVR, really? There's got to be a better headset name than this. But apparently that's what's going on here. Now, this is an unconfirmed rumor, and the website that had this report is a little bit on the sketchy side. It's not a well-known, reputable website that delivers this kind of information. So honestly, take all of this with a grain of salt. Also, this name UltraGearVR, it could be a name for like the Korean market, and maybe not necessarily when they bring it to the US. So I don't know if this is officially really going to be the name or not, but that's what we've heard. UltraGearVR is the name for the new LG headset. Now the wonder is hearing about this name, does this signify that maybe some more information is coming about the LG? Remember, I don't think it's coming this year, but maybe we could get some info on it in the near future. So we'll look forward to that. But yeah, the UltraGearVR name, it's kind of funny because it reminds me, I remember way back in the days when Nintendo had they were working on their Nintendo 64, and way back in the days they were calling it the Ultra 64. And I remember Game Fan magazine, there was this magazine called Die Hard Game Fan. It was my favorite video game magazine back in the early 90s. But this magazine, like, their editors were talking about this Ultra 64 name, and they were like, it sounds like a gasoline or something, like Ultra 64 gasoline. And so I was reminded of that when I heard this UltraGearVR. But yeah, not the best name in the world. Samsung Odyssey, that's a pretty cool name. But UltraGearVR, not so much. Okay, another little news story that we have is Samsung has announced that they have a 4K spatial audio camera called 360 round. So this is a new VR camera, and a lot of different companies are making VR cameras. Obviously, Nokia had that one VR camera that they were working on for a while, but then we heard that they closed down that division entirely and laid off like 300 employees. So I don't know if we're ever going to get that Nokia camera that they were working on. But a lot of different companies are working on these VR cameras, and one of the reasons they're doing it is they want to solve this idea of how do you record in 360 degrees and how do you seamlessly integrate it all so that it looks natural. Because I can tell you, in the future, I truly believe that this is going to be the case. if you look back in history, one easy way to think about history and to think about how things continue to progress is to look at photographs over the decades. Just look at photographs from the early 20th century, and photographs from like 1950, and photographs from 1960 and 1970 and 1980 and 1990. If you simply just look at photographs over the years, you can really see that there is this constant improvement in like how the photographs look and the era that we're in, and it just continues. It's just not going to stop. It's the same thing with the video. Now average Joes like myself can make relatively clean, crisp videos, and so the professionals, like the high-end thing, is going to get better and better, and this is just the way things progress. I remember when I first got my HTC Vive headset, I went into one of these experiences where it was showing 360 videos. It might have been, can't remember which one it was. It might have been Introduction to Virtual Reality, Felix and Paul Studios, which is really good. You know, they had the elephants, and they had, what was in that? Oh, they had this guy that was juggling these fire sticks, and that looked really good. There were a few things in there that was really looking good. And one thing that they had in that video, I think it was that video, or I might be mistaking it with another video, but it was like they were in a tent of some primitive tribe kind of, and all the elders were sitting around, and they were kind of telling stories, and it was 360 degrees. You could look all around and you could see everybody in there, and the resolution of everything was really crappy. It wasn't very good. It's blocky, it's pixelated and all that type of stuff, but it shows you this 360 degree view of what's going on in that room. And I really feel like that's the future. I think another thing that you could look at to see the passage of time and to see how things have improved over the years is like families' Christmas videos. If you look back at a Christmas video that a family did back in the 70s or 80s, you know, it's like an 8mm camera, and that's what they had to use. And then we got camcorders in the 80s and 90s, and then it just keeps improving and improving. And I do believe in the future, like you're going to go to your Christmas party, and someone's going to have a camera that they're going to put in there, and it's just going to record the whole freaking event in 360 degrees. People opening up presents, your drunk uncle acting inappropriately. All those things are going to be recorded in 360 degrees. And it's going to be magical, because for people later on down the road that want to see something that happened earlier on, they're going to be able to put on that VR headset and kind of stand in that room and experience what happened in this room. And it's just going to get better and better and better. So there is a race by a lot of different companies to try to make the camera that is going to be the future of this. We need cameras like this for recording NBA games in VR, or other sporting events, boxing matches, stuff like that. We got to figure out how we're going to do this. And so a lot of different companies are working on that, and Samsung is working on it, and they have this 4K spatial audio camera that is called 360 round. Now, am I going to buy this, or are you going to buy this? Probably not, because this is going to cost $10,500 when it first comes out. This thing has 17 lenses that surround it, and it's about the size of a Roomba, you know, the little vacuum thing that you put on the ground. It's pretty big. It's not the smallest thing in the world, but apparently this has been in development with Samsung since way back in 2014. They were calling it Project Beyond back then. And so this is going to be coming out, I believe, sometime next year. This is obviously for professionals. This is for people that are in the industry that are trying to make 360 videos and experiences. And so we're going to continue to get cameras from a bunch of different companies that are going to try to push this forward. Facebook, of course, has a number of cameras that they're working on. And I think it's only a matter of time, a few years from now, where we're going to have some incredible cameras that are going to be able to capture 360 degree footage, and that's going to be the future. People are not going to think about flat anymore. The future is going to be 360. It's going to be like standing in the room where something happened, and you're like visiting history for a brief period of time. It's going to really be magical, to be totally honest with you. I can tell you when I'm like 80 or 90 years old, I'm going to be looking back at like 20-year-old 360 videos and be like, wow, you can like be in this place and you could see what's going on here, and that's pretty exciting. Another little tidbit of news, Fujitsu is going to join the mixed reality club. Now, we know we have so many mixed reality headsets that are coming from a lot of different manufacturers. Fujitsu has now been announced as another one of these manufacturers. They're going to be bringing out a mixed reality headset later this year in Japan. Now, we don't know if this is going to come stateside or not, but this does appear to be kind of a lower end version of the mixed reality headsets with lower end specs, not necessarily a high end one like the Samsung Odyssey. This is going to be more like the Acer. So Fujitsu is another name that is throwing their hat in the mixed reality ring. Let's see here. What else do we got? Oh, Europe is getting a PlayStation VR bundle that includes Gran Turismo Sport. And if you've seen the package for this, it shows, it's a box that has the PlayStation VR bundle, but it's including Gran Turismo Sport. Well, I talked about Gran Turismo Sport yesterday, and I didn't have very nice things to say about it, because the truth of the matter is that the VR support in this game is very much an afterthought. So this is really puzzling to me that they would actually make a PSVR bundle based around this game that barely supports VR. Remember, when you get into this game, if you want to do anything serious in Gran Turismo Sport, you're going to have to spend a lot of time with your headset off, trying to unlock tracks, trying to unlock cars, because you can't do it in the VR mode. And they're going to sell a bundle that has this game that doesn't really make a ton of sense to me. Now, I know in Europe, Gran Turismo in the past, like in the late 90s and in the early 2000s, Gran Turismo was an absolute phenomenon across Europe. It did well here, of course, in the USA, but man, in Europe, it's the thing that gave Sony that region. Like, Sony is so dominant across Europe, and a big part of that reason was Gran Turismo in the late 90s and in the early 2000s, and then also FIFA having good versions of FIFA on various PlayStation platforms as well. That really helped it as well. But I mean, I understand why they're doing this bundle from a marketing standpoint, but the game doesn't really take very good advantage of VR. It's just a lost opportunity altogether. Every time I think about Gran Turismo Sport VR, it's just a kind of a depressing thing to think about, because I think potential was there. There's a lot that can be done. I mean, hopefully, maybe the only thing I can be hopeful about is that maybe they'll add some more features to Gran Turismo Sport from a VR standpoint. I don't see why they can't have a time trial. It's quite mind-boggling that they don't have a time trial, because if you did a time trial mode, there's no cars on the track. Why can't they do a time trial? Why can't it save your time? But, we got into that yesterday. We don't need to get into it again today. Another little story we have that hit in the last couple of days is Magic Leap. So I've talked about Magic Leap a number of times on the VR Roundtable podcast. And the thing about Magic Leap that I'll say is that almost everywhere you go around the internet, when someone starts talking about Magic Leap, you instantly have like 10, 15 people that come into the conversation and they just say, oh, it's vaporware. This is the biggest scam ever, blah, 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 blah. And I've kind of been on the opposite fence of that. Like, I don't know, for some reason, I believe in Magic Leap. And I think the reason that I believe in Magic Leap is because if you look back on history, inventions are made, inventions come out, and every so often, like every 20 years, every 25 years or so, there's a major invention that hits that just freaking changes shit. It just upends the entire playing field. And I feel like something like that could happen with Magic Leap and with augmented reality and tricking the human perception system and taking advantage of how our brains process information. And the thing about Magic Leap is when this first started, you got to understand this guy, Roni Abovitz, the guy that created Magic Leap, the founder of Magic Leap, he was working for medical, like surgery equipment, like robots that perform surgery. And the whole Magic Leap thing was discovered completely by accident. It wasn't designed, like they were using these fiber optic cameras for these robots to perform surgery, and it somehow registered in Roni Abovitz's mind that maybe they could use these fiber optic cameras to actually send light into our eyes. And that's how this whole thing got started. I still believe that Magic Leap has something incredible. And part of my belief in that is you look at the CEO of Google, he sits on the board of Magic Leap, okay? The CEO of Alphabet is sitting on the board of Magic Leap. And I don't think he would waste his time with that if there wasn't something seriously impressive with Magic Leap. And the reason Magic Leap is in the news, I should probably mention that, is they got another $500 million of funding in a Series D round funding. The interesting thing about Magic Leap getting all this money, I'm curious, are they breaking records? Are they literally breaking records in how much money has been poured on a company with no real product to show off? And they've got to be breaking records, because what is their valuation now? Is it like $6 billion, $7 billion? I mean, they don't even have a product. They haven't sold a single product. They have hundreds of employees, thousands of employees, I think. Now, I know, here's one thing about Magic Leap, though, is like everybody thinks it's vaporware. It's never going to happen. No, there's companies working on Magic Leap software right now as we speak. There are companies working on Magic Leap games. They're working on Magic Leap software. This is really going to happen. This is not vaporware. This is going to happen. Now, is it going to be the dream that we all dream? I don't know. In fact, I'm kind of edging to the side that it's not going to be as incredible as we thought, because remember that one major story came out on Magic Leap where it seemed that the true dream of what they were able to do is this big gigantic thing, and they had to miniaturize it. And the theory was they weren't able to miniaturize it. And so they had to kind of scrap part of that and kind of redirect their whole thing and kind of make just kind of a Me Too HoloLens type of thing. That's kind of one of the last stories that we heard about that, and that does concern me. But still, people are throwing $500 million at this late stage. There's got to be something. There's got to be something here, or there's just a lot of dumb people that are just throwing billions of dollars away. And I go back to the Alphabet CEO. He's sitting on the board of Magic Leap, and I just don't think he's an idiot. So I think there has to be something here. Magic Leap has to have a product. It's going to be coming in the near future. I think we're going to see this product in early 2018, and it might release late 2018. It's going to be expensive. We've heard like $1,500, that kind of range. But I think dev kits are supposed to be going out real soon for this. So I don't know. It's the whole Magic Leap thing is an interesting question, but I'm still fascinated by it. And I'm still hopeful about it, because I believe that things come along that change the paradigm. It happens repeatedly, and this could be one of those things, So it's about time. I think we need a paradigm shift, and maybe Magic Leap is the one to bring it to us. Okay, so that pretty much takes care of like my news discussion for this show. Now I wanted to get into the game discussion. Now I told you guys yesterday I was going to play Talos Principle VR, and then I was going to play the Gallery Episode 2 Heart of the Emberstone. Okay, I have not played the Gallery 2 yet. I have not played Episode 2 yet. I'm hoping to be able to play that today, but I did not get around to that yesterday. Now, as far as the Talos Principle VR, I did get into the Talos Principle VR. Unfortunately, things didn't work too well for me with this game, and so I don't have a ton to say about it. What happened is when I got into it yesterday, I had really bad performance issues, okay? And it was so bad that basically the way I'll describe it is like you put the headset on, right? And you're in this experience and you're looking around at stuff, but the view is like, the view's like it's almost like screen tearing. You know, when you play a flat monitor game and there's like screen tearing, that's kind of like what it was in my headset. It was awful. It was giving me a headache, actually. I had to almost like take the headset off and I couldn't deal with it. But then I went back into it and I started changing a bunch of settings. There is literally millions of settings in this game. You go into the options and there's options after options after options. It keeps opening up. There's so many little different settings that you can adjust. And I tried changing like the resolution. I lowered it to the 50% thing. So I lowered it to the lowest possible thing. I lowered the windowed resolution to the lowest resolution. I was playing around with a bunch of the settings trying to get, I was hoping, well, if I could go into the settings, I could adjust a few things in the settings, then maybe everything will work great and I can really enjoy this experience. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. I did adjust some settings. I activated the Oculus mode because when you first start this game, a lot of times when you go into Steam and you hit play, a little box will open up and it will have two possible checkboxes. And one of the checkboxes is, do you want to start this game in like the Oculus SDK mode? And if the game has that, that's great, because right now I am using a Rift headset for everything. So if something has the Oculus SDK mode, that's good because I can select that and then it's running like native Oculus type of deal. So you get the asynchronous space warp and you get all of that, and it helps performance and stuff. But with the Talos principle, when you hit play, in Steam, it doesn't pop that box up. You don't get that same kind of box where it has the Oculus option or the Steam option. You don't get that. So you have to go into the game, and then when you're in the settings, there's an Oculus mode that you can activate from within the settings. And so I activated that Oculus mode, and then it started switching, like it was like doing something with the headset and stuff. And so I think it then switched over to the Oculus SDK. The performance of it did improve a little bit when I activated this Oculus mode. Not quite as bad. And I was able to spend, 15, 20 minutes in the experience walking around, checking stuff out, and I was able to kind of deal with it, but it still had the screen tearing, and I was still starting to get a headache, so I just couldn't stay in it very long. Now today, when I go in there today, I just didn't get enough time yesterday to screw around with it, but when I go in there today, I'm going to play more with the settings, and I'm going to try to figure out a way to dial this in so I can enjoy this game, because I can tell you when I was in there, I see glimpses of a beautiful experience. You have these robot hands, right, that look pretty cool. But for me, when I was playing it, the robot hands were constantly like jittering and stuff. Like I would look at the hand and it was going like that, and so it kind of screwed with the experience. Like it would be really nice if I looked at the hand and it was just perfectly smooth, because one of the things I like to do with VR is, and I've said this before, I like to smell the flowers, when it comes to these VR experiences. I like to see the sun shining. I love it when there's sunlight in VR and there's shade, and you go from the shade to the sunlight, and like your little robot hand goes from the shade to the sunlight. I love that, man. There's something really cool about like sunlight in VR, and just going up to the walls. Like there's these brick walls and stuff that are in the early parts of the Talos principle, and I'll just put my hand like close to the brick wall without touching it and just looking at it, and I'm just looking at everything, and I'm like, man, this is so cool. I'm in this experience. Because remember, Destinations, the Steam Destinations program that you can get into, where it has photogrammetry stuff, they had a Talos principle photogrammetry thing that was in there. This is like a year ago, and that was like the first thing I tried, and I remember being in there and I really liked it, and I was like, man, I wish this whole game was in VR. And then we got it. That's what we got. And so being in there with the sunlight and stuff, it's really nice. So anyway, you're teleporting around, and it's kind of this is a puzzle game. You have to solve puzzles, and there's these projectors that you'll find in different places, and you can pick up the projector and you'll get to these certain gates that are blocked. There's like a force field there, and you have to take the projector and you set it down and you aim it at the force field. It'll turn off the force field, and then that will allow you to get through there. And then there's all these other puzzles. So it's a thinking game. It's a puzzle game, kind of like Zing, The Land Beyond. It's a little bit like that. Like you have to solve these puzzles, and you're trying to figure things out. And that's basically what the game is about. I was enjoying it as much as I could, but the screen tearing and the jitter and the shake and everything was just giving me a real headache. So I just kind of had to quit out of it. And then I went over to the Oculus subreddit, and I did a little thread on performance and stuff. And people were just saying, lower different settings. I lowered a ton of settings, but I'm going to try to go back in today and try to lower some more settings. I was hoping that there would be maybe some very specific settings that will save you the most, and just to know what those are, and to be able to lower those, but I don't know yet. So I'm just going to have to play around with a ton of settings. Now, they do have a little frame counter thing, but it doesn't work in the headset. It works on the monitor. And so what Steve was telling me, VR Roundtable, I told him about the performance issues I was having, and he said what I should do is I should activate that frame counter thing, but it doesn't work in the headset. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to hold up my Oculus headset and kind of move it around and watch the frame thing as I change different settings. So it's kind of a pain in the ass to have to go through all of this, but that's the pot I have to piss in when it comes to having a 970 video card. And it is a problem, having a 970 video card. It's funny because we actually got a comment on one of the recent videos that I did. There was a comment where this one guy was saying, man, you really need to get a 1080 Ti because you're not able to play these games. You're not able to super sample it. I think what he was commenting on is, I was talking about Arctica 1, or maybe it was the Drive Club discussion. I mean, not Drive Club, but Gran Turismo, where I'm talking about distant objects being just pixely to no end and being blurry and fuzzy. And I think what he was getting to is that if I had a 1080 Ti and I was able to super sample, maybe some of that stuff wouldn't be quite as blurry. So his point was, it's not necessarily these headsets. It might really be your video card. Like if you upgrade your video card and have a way better video card where you can super sample, then maybe some of these distant objects won't be quite as blurry, won't have quite as much aliasing and all of that sort of thing. And I never thought about that. And that's an interesting point, because I'm saying that our modern day like these current headsets, they're just not up to snuff. I'm saying that. But the thing is, I'm saying that with a 970. I'm not saying that with a 1080 Ti. I still believe, though, even if I had a 1080 Ti, and I am speaking out of my ass right now because I don't know. I've never played with a 1080 Ti. But I still believe that even if you're able to super sample and do all that stuff, I still believe there's blurriness on distant objects, because I know people with 1080 Ti's that are playing Project Cars 2, and they still say you still have that blurriness. The blurriness is still a problem. So I'm sure it would alleviate some of it and maybe not make it quite as bad, but I still think we need dramatic improvements in resolution, dramatic improvements in screen door, dramatic improvements in cutting down glare and stray light. And hopefully all of these things will be coming in the very near future. But I do get your point. I should have a much better video card, and I'm going to get a much better video card in the very near future. In fact, December 12th, the release of Fallout 4 VR, that was always my target date. The day that Fallout 4 VR is available is the day that I need to have a new video card. I've said that repeatedly, and so I'm definitely going to look into upgrading my 970 finally. And I'm going to definitely head down that road. So hopefully that will no longer be a concern. But one of the other guys commented to this guy's comment, and he said, well, actually, the fact that Anthony has a 970, that's actually kind of good, because he kind of gets the experience of the everyman, because I'm reviewing games, and it is something to consider, because if you review every game on a 1080 Ti, you might have an incredibly powerful experience with that 1080 Ti, but 60% of the VR gaming population might not have a 1080 Ti, and they're not getting that incredible experience. And so your review can be colored and not really deliver like the everyman situation for that particular game, where with me having a 970, I'm kind of getting that low-end experience. So if it's good for me, it's good for everybody. And if it's bad for me, it could still be good for 1080 Ti guys, but people with 970s, 980s, they might need to, they might need to think about it twice before they buy some of these more taxing games. But it does appear that Talos Principle is a bit of a taxing game, one of these more taxing games. Normally, I can play pretty much every VR game. The only VR games that I've really had major problems with was Paranormal Activity. I could not play a Paranormal Activity for the longest time. Okay, I can play it now because if I run it in the Oculus SDK mode, that space warp whatever, it allows me to play it. Like, I don't know what it does, or maybe some updates that have happened to it. I can play Paranormal Activity now. The only other game I can think of is like Soul Keeper VR. I had some problems with that. That's a crappy game anyway. So it really, man, Soul Keeper VR. Does anybody think about what happened with Soul Keeper VR? Like, what went wrong with Soul Keeper VR? Well, here we are again, guys. We're at the 31-minute mark of this podcast and of this daily vlog. And I didn't get to raw data. Again, I have it on my list, but I didn't put it up high on my list because I know you guys are not that hyped on hearing about raw data. First of all, probably most of this audience that is watching this is probably Vive gamers and Oculus gamers, and you probably don't care about PlayStation VR very much. But I try to cover everything, because I'm all in on VR. And I don't have a particular favorite. Like, I love all of this stuff. There's too much good stuff. I like the PlayStation VR. And for those of you that don't have a PlayStation VR, this is a great time to pick one up because a lot of people are going to be upgrading to that new one. In fact, I think Target had this deal. It was Cartwheel, like 25% off. People were able to get the PlayStation VR a la carte headset, not with the bundle with the Move controllers and the camera, but just the headset. People were able to get that for like $225, brand new, with this Target Cartwheel 25% off app. Now that's only good in the US, and I'm not sure if it's even still active right now. But I did see a thread on the PSVR subreddit where Amazon was giving $100 off on one of the PSVR headsets as well. So it is kind of a good time to maybe pick up a PSVR, especially if you have some kids in your family and you don't, sometimes your kids want to use your Oculus or your Vive, and sometimes you're kind of worried that they're going to smack something, and this is your high-end headset, where if you have a PSVR headset, I can tell you myself personally, like, my kids, I let them play the Vive, I let them play the Rift, but I kind of keep my eye on them when I do. When I let them play PSVR, I can walk away and not worry about it too much, because if they break that thing, it's not the end of the world. It wasn't like $800, $600, $500 like the other ones were, so that's one advantage of having a PSVR. Also, it travels well. It travels very well. You could take it on trips. Because all you need is that PS4. You don't need to have a big giant tower with you and stuff like that. So that's kind of cool as well. But anyways, way over the 30-minute mark. Didn't get to raw data again. I don't know what to say. This is what I'll do. This is what I'll promise. Friday, I'm going to start the episode off with raw data discussion. And you guys, even if you don't have a PSVR, I'm telling you, you want to hear this discussion because it's so impressive, this port that Survios was able to achieve on PSVR. I'm truly impressed. There were times I was playing raw data on my PSVR, and it felt like raw data. It felt like raw, I mean, there was no difference in certain respects. Now, you really start to look close at the graphics and stuff, especially the explosions. You'll notice the difference. But for the most part, I was playing raw data on PSVR, and I thought that was incredible, you know, because raw data is a powerful, impactful sci-fi experience, and I didn't think you could get that on PSVR. Like, I thought it'd be so watered down that it would be almost laughable, but it wasn't. But anyway, I'll get to that a little bit more tomorrow, and I'll have some more Talos Principle talk as well. I'm going to play with my settings today and figure that out. I might be able to get my hands on Heart of the Ember Stone and give that a try as well. So we'll definitely have some more stuff to talk about tomorrow. So I'll see you guys then. Take it easy, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.